Welcome, Grimms. I'm sorry I didn't hear you knock, she said in a thick Russian accent. She grinned and gestured to a TV. I get so caught up in my stories. Hope just caught Bo having an affair with Marlena. You should have heard her scream. It was hilarious. But that's what Hope gets. She was cheating on both John when they went to Spain. Now's not the time to get on the moral high horse. The family stared at the witch dumbfounded. You've never seen Days of Our Lives? She asked. Everyone shook their heads. Oh, well, the witch said as she was lifted out of the chair and placed on the floor by an unseen force. Rhoda has told me about your problem. I believe I can be of some assistance. So you're not going to eat us? Daphne said. Not today, child. Perhaps when you are older. Children are mostly gristle at your age, Baba Yaga said as she turned to Jake. But you, on the other hand, I thought I told you I would feast on your innards the next time I saw you in my house. Uncle Jake shuddered. We need your part of the Volpa blade, he stammered. I wouldn't have come if it wasn't important. You grim men are a bit jumpy. Sporting Grim was the same way when he brought up the blade, she said. What's the matter, Jacob? Do I make you nervous? Sabrina clutched the wand in her pocket and stepped forward bravely. Are you going to give us the blade or not? She said. For a price, the witch said. A price? Sabrina said. There's always a price, child. Okay, what do you want? Sabrina said, reaching into her other pocket. She pulled out a couple dollars in change. She urged her sister to do the same. Daphne managed to produce a little rubber ball, a button, a paper clip, and 10 cents. I suppose if this isn't enough, we could mow your lawn in the summertime, maybe dust your bones and headstones. I want the wand, Baba Yaga said. The words felt like a slap in the face to Sabrina. For the last few days, she had felt confident like never before, and it was all due to Mother's wand. When she had it in her hand, she no longer had to run. Bad guys backed away. It was the source of her power, and it dissolved her fear. Asking her to give up the wand was like asking her to hand over a leg or an arm. I don't know what you're talking about, she lied. The witch smiled broadly, revealing a mouthful of puffy gums. The child hasn't been touched, Jacob, she said. I'm the man, just like her uncle. No, she hasn't, Uncle Jake said with a sneer as he turned to Sabrina. Give it to her, Brina. No, Sabrina said. We might need it when we face Red Riding Hood and the Jabberwocky. No one, no blade. It's that simple, Baba Yaga said. Sabrina took the wand out of her pocket and pointed it at the old woman. Her hand was shaking with anger. Then we'll take it from you. Sabrina, think about Mom and Dad. We need a blade. Not some lousy magic stick, Daphne pleaded, but was drowned out by the rumbling thunder overhead. Sabrina, give the wand to Baba Yaga, Uncle Jake shouted. Sabrina shook her head. Give us the blade. The witch cocked an eyebrow at her and sneered. You don't want me as your enemy, child. Suddenly, Uncle Jake reached into his pocket and removed a small fire-red stone. Energy emanated from it and filled the room, and suddenly a shocking force yanked the wand out of Sabrina's hands, sending it sailing across the room and into Baba Yaga's hands. The energy running through Sabrina quickly faded, only to be replaced with a rage at her uncle for betraying her. Okay, old mother, Uncle Jake said. You've got your payment. Let's see the merchandise. Very well, the witch said as she stepped across the room to a table where an old mug sat the red, foxy grandma. It was filled with wands. She carelessly stuffed Sabrina's in with the others and opened a drawer in the table. Inside was a shiny piece of metal. She took it out and handed the piece of blade to Jake. He studied it. Sabrina noticed that unlike the other portions of the blade, there was no inscription carved into it. There was no clue to finding the blue fairy. We need help putting this back together, Uncle Jake said. The blue fairy is the only one who can do it. If the price was right, could you tell us where she is? The old crone shook her head. Mounds of hair fell from her head and onto the floor. Some things are not for sale, the witch said. She clapped her hands, and red dawn, bright sun, and dark midnight entered the room. My knights will escort you out, Baba Yaga said. Jake nodded to her respectfully and led the girls toward the door. Well, that was easier than I expected, Uncle Jake said. Jacob, the old witch called out, your mother saved you from my hungry teeth this time. She paid quite a price for your past intrusion. You should go home and thank her. But know this, if you ever invade my home again, I'll suck the marrow out of your bones while you watch. Uncle Jake's face turned white, and Alice let out a surprised yelp. Tell your mother I said hello, Baba Yaga continued, changing her tone to that of a sweet old lady. The cat, the hawk, and the terrier led the family outside into the cold clearing and left them at the gate. Uncle Jake looked down the blade and smiled. We did it. Daphne hugged Elvis tightly. You were so brave. Let's get this home and see what Mom has to say about it, Uncle Jake said. No, Sabrina said softly. I can't leave the wine with her. It belongs to me and we need it. You saw her. She tossed it aside like it was nothing. Well, it's not nothing. That wine might save our lives. Sabrina, get a hold of yourself, Uncle Jake snapped. We've got the blade. That's all important. We're lucky all she wanted was the wand. It's gone. Forget about it. Sabrina couldn't believe he was so willing to surrender. Before her uncle could stop her, she reached into her overcoat pocket and snatched the shoes of swiftness. She slipped on her and turned to her family. I'm going back for it. She won't even know I was in there. Sabrina, no, Uncle Jake demanded. It was too late. Sabrina ran back to the house, opened the door, and in a flash she was racing into Baba Yaga's room. She snatched the mug off the little table at a speed faster than the human eye. Unfortunately, Baba Yaga stuck out a bony leg and tripped her. Sabrina slammed hard onto the floor. Her little mug shattered, spraying magic wands all over the floor. Sabrina snatched up the nearest one before being yanked off her feet by her hair. Baba Yaga's inhuman strength allowed her to dangle Sabrina in front of her. Your grandmother will be disappointed to know you are a thief, the witch said. Cooking you would save her the anguish of finding out. Sabrina fumbled with the wand and eventually aimed it at the witch's face. She thought of thunderstorms and flicked the wand with her wrist. Nothing happened. The witch cackled. I'll give you some credit. You were braver than your uncle. He snuck in here and ran like a rat when I found him. You are still putting up a fight. Sadly, your passion is fueled by your addiction. It's made you so blind you can't even tell that you're not holding Merlin's wand. All that little trinket does is turn people into frogs. Well, then I hope you like flies, ugly, Sabrina said as she conjured a big, fat, slimy frog in her mind. There was a sudden zap and a cloud of dust, and the sound of laughter filled her ears. You really have to be sure to point those things in the right direction, the witch said as the smoke cleared. Sabrina was no longer in the witch's grasp. In fact, she was staring directly at the woman's crusty, corny feet. Fudge, I made her a giant, Sabrina thought to herself as Baba Yaga's gnarled hand reached down and scooped her off the floor. Sabrina squirmed, but she couldn't get free. Oh, goody for me, the witch said as she held Sabrina close to her face. I haven't had frog legs since the last time I was in Paris. Frog legs? What is she talking about? Sabrina looked down at herself. Her feet were green and webbed. Her skin was slimy and sticky. Her belly was like a massive sack hanging between her skinny little legs. A bubbling gurgle churned in her gut, slowly rising up through her body, and then her wide mouth opened. I'm a frog, she croaked. Baba Yaga lifted the frog up above her head and slowly dipped her down into her open jaws. Sabrina struggled and used her webbed feet to block her descent into the witch's hungry mouth. Wiggling frantically, she slipped out of the witch's hand and tumbled to the floor. Without allowing herself any time to recover, she leaped toward the door, flailing and screaming as she went. Her new amphibious body could leap incredible lengths, but controlling the leaps was impossible. "My lunch!" the witch cried. "She's getting away! Red dawn, bright sun, dark midnight, help Mommy!" The animals raced into the room. They spotted Sabrina and raced after her. She jumped as high as she could, and her skinny spring-like legs propelled her high over the creature's sharp claws and vicious fangs. She sailed into the next room. Spotting the front door on the opposite wall, she jumped toward it, but unfortunately smacked into it head first. She felt dazed and hurt as the witch's guardians rushed toward her. All three began to grow and change. Bright Sun returned to his tiger warrior form, while Red Dawn morphed into a horrible bird-like man with a savage beak and rippling arms. Black Midnight's transformation was equally disturbing. When it was finished, he was a hunched, muscled giant with thick black hair all over his body and savage fangs. All three of the guardians were in armor and held long swords in their hands. Sabrina knocked over the table with the witch's potions and powders, knocking over vials and bottles. The three guardians swung their swords at her frog body, destroying books with each mighty blow. Sabrina managed to keep just ahead of the knights, but she couldn't hop forever. Bright Sun landed a blow that nearly took off her webbed foot and managed to upend a bowl, splattering himself with a particularly foul-smelling potion. He was instantly transformed into a little red mouse. He scurried across the floor, but not before he caught the attention of Red Dawn. The hawkman dove for the mouse, only to morph into a tiny spider when he knocked a vial of blue powder on himself. Black Midnight kept up the chase, but quickly suffered a similar fate as his companions. Something spilled on him that made his body inflate like a balloon. He soon drifted to the ceiling, where he was unable to get at Sabrina. Sabrina leaped back down to the ground and headed for the closed door. She soon realized that without hands to open it, she was trapped inside the house. "Uncle Jake!" she cried. "Open the door!" Suddenly, the door swung open and Sabrina hopped out into the cold air. The family stared down at her with mouths agape. "All right, let me say it for you. I told you so," Sabrina grumbled. "Is that you?" Uncle Jake said, reaching down and picking her up off the ground. "Yes," she said. "You're squeezing too hard." Just then, a window opened and the witch stuck her head out of it. She shook her fist at the family and screamed. "She's mine!" Baba Yaga shouted from a window. "She tried to steal from me." "You know I can't give her back, Crone," Uncle Jake said. "I was hoping you'd say that," the witch said. A liquidy cackle bubbled from her throat and the ground started to shake. "What's that?" Daphne said. "Here, hold your sister," Uncle Jake said as he put Sabrina into Daphne's hands. He nervously fumbled through his pockets, yanking out odds and ends, and growing more discouraged by the second. "What's going on?" Sabrina said, struggling for a view around Daphne's thumb. Uncle Jake turned to her and tried to explain, but his words were drowned out by a horrible tearing sound followed by an incredible sight. Baba Yaga's house lifted itself off the ground on two massive chicken legs and walked toward them. Sabrina wanted to scream, but all that came out was "Ribbit!" Daphne and Elvis both whined at the same time. "You know what?" Uncle Jake said, giving up his search. "Let's just make a run for it." He spun around, snatched Daphne's free hand, and dragged her back down the path. Elvis followed, barking and growling at the house that stomped after them. "I hope you're happy," Daphne said to Sabrina as the group raced through the woods. "When we find Mom and Dad, I'm telling." A dense forest slowed the house down a little, both each. That seems to be the end of this video. I'll send them later. Goodbye.